Sometimes we go through an experience that just completely changes the way we look at the world. The type of experience that just redefines your whole perspective and becomes a part of who you are as a person from that point forward. For me, living here in Capitol Hill in Seattle during the protests of summer 2020, well, that was one of those experiences. And honestly, it's really hard to even start making this video because I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings about the whole thing, and it's a little nerve-wracking to be talking about something that's so politically charged on my new channel. But I really do think that this is important, so I'm going to give it a shot. Protests had been erupting nationwide in response to the murder of George Floyd. And to be honest, for the first few days, this was really just something I read about online. But as it turns out, it's one thing to hear about something in the news or to see a headline, but it's a whole different experience to actually live through it. You know, to be woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of explosions. What the fuck is happening out there? So we jumped on the computer and tried to figure out what the hell was going on outside. What we saw was a flurry of videos and live streams capturing police brutality taking place in our own neighborhood.
Police now advancing on protesters. Oh my gosh, what are they?
Clearly, I wasn't the only one who was shocked and appalled by this, because the next day, it really felt like the entire city of Seattle came out in solidarity to take a stand against what we'd seen the night before. The people who claimed to be serving and protecting our community were instead abusing it. And we needed to make it clear that this was not acceptable. It was honestly amazing to see so many people come out and unify behind this issue. But that night, when many of the protesters had gone home, the city declared a riot. And once that happened, the police let loose, shooting tear gas and rubber bullets indiscriminately into the crowd. It didn't matter if you were a peaceful protester, or a journalist, or just somebody who lived in the area. They looked at us all the same, as enemies, as rioters, and they attacked us accordingly. And this continued for over a week. Every day, the citizens of Seattle would come out and peacefully demonstrate that we did not support the excessive force being used in our neighborhoods. And every night, the city and the police responded by brutalizing anybody in the proximity with violence. The sounds of explosions that echoed throughout the city streets night after night were like a recurring nightmare. And for those of us who lived here, it became really important to understand what was going on behind those sounds. Which leads me to today's guest. Anybody who was paying attention during the summer 2020 protests here in Seattle is already probably familiar with Omari Salisbury. He was the reporter who, more than anyone else, we all really grew to rely on during these times. His live streams from the front line of the protest site were an eye-opening look into the reality of what was actually happening and how unacceptable it was.
It's on now. It's on. East Precinct, they're losing control. State police are trying to open the barricade. They're putting the pepper spray in the air. This is what's going on. I only got one eye. These are flashbangs. This is flashbangs that they're deploying flash. Hey, bring this shit down. Bring it down. Bring it down. Bring it down. Bring it down! Share this stream! God damn it! It's the tear gas! It's the fucking tear gas! Police! Stop! Holy shit! Tear gas is everywhere! Holy shit! Oh shit!
A bit better, man?
Yes.
Maybe some water. Maybe some water too.
I got water here. Here. Man, I got water. There was so much tear gas. Water.
I just remember being so grateful and so impressed that Omari kept showing up day after day, despite the fact that he was being repeatedly attacked by the police just for being there.
Somebody's in a wheelchair right here. Somebody's in a wheelchair behind you. So hold on. He's in a wheelchair. Oh, you motherfucker. Who is that? Is that guy? That fucking gunner? Hey, bro, you know you're fucked up. Oh, you want to give it to me? You see him? You see him? You see how he threw it at me? You see how he threw it at me? Fucking piece of shit, man. Look at you guys. Look at you guys. You guys heard me say it was a woman in a wheelchair behind me. Here she is. Here's the woman in the wheelchair. Here's the woman in the wheelchair. Nobody's scared out here anymore. The lieutenant has now come out, and the police are now moving out. The street is going to open up.
And when police finally abandoned the area, Omari's live streams continued to serve as an important window into what was happening on the streets.
So hold the line. And ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in over a week, Pine Street is now open.
While the major news conglomerates painted a radical picture of the unpoliced zone,
CHAZ for short. Several blocks of the city now taken over by protesters.
We're not going to let Seattle be occupied by anarchists.
Omari combated the sensationalism by providing a constant live stream that highlighted the complex and beautiful nuance of the situation. It's now been about a year and a half since those protests came to an end. The police eventually returned to the area, but their relationship with our local community continues to be severely damaged by what took place. The streets are no longer jam-packed with protesters, the police are no longer barricading the area, but for those of us who lived through that summer, we will never look at this intersection or the Seattle Police Department the same after what took place here. Like I said before, this whole experience just completely changed and reframed the way I'm looking at the world, and I've really struggled to convey the gravity of what took place with people who haven't lived through it. And even a video or a podcast like this really falls short of capturing the full experience. As for Omari, he continues to do the work every day to provide our community with hard-hitting local journalism under the umbrella of his independent media outlet, Converge Media. For me, they've been a really reliable and consistent source of good information, ranging on everything from our local elections and politics to just human stories from people in our community. It's really great stuff. I can't seem to stop looking back on that summer and replaying the events over and over again in my head. So I decided to reach out to Omari and invite him to sit down and talk about his reflections on the Seattle protests of summer 2020. One quick note as you watch this interview. Me and Omari actually started having this conversation and got about halfway through when the power went out and we lost the entire recording. As a result, we had to start over from the beginning, which Omari was very gracious about, and I appreciate that. But yeah, we had to have a lot of this conversation twice, and you'll hear us reference that a couple times throughout this conversation. And now you know why. All right, enjoy. All right, take two.
Such is life, bro.
We had some technical difficulties, but I am sitting here with the founder, I'm going to say it again, like it or not, of Converge Media, Omari Salisbury. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and talk to me today, man.
No, it's good to be here. You know, we literally broadcasting from the basement.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is dope. Also, man, a building like this is becoming a rarity up here on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like a real old school building and everything else. I mean, there's nothing wrong with living in some nice new luxury stuff either, but, you know, it's a lot of character in these old buildings.
I agree, man.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to jump into kind of covering some ground we already covered. Could you tell me a little bit about kind of how you got your foot in journalism and what got you to where you are now with Converge Media?
Yep. So, I mean, first of all, from the Central District of Seattle, grew up in 29th and Jackson, went to James A. Garfield High School. And, when I was at Garfield, I was on the Messenger. The Messenger is the school newspaper. And by the way, something interesting about the Garfield Messenger. Um, have you ever heard of Naomi Ishisaka? It's a writer for the Seattle Times.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
So Naomi, we went to school together at Garfield. And also Dan Beekman went to Garfield too. Dan Beekman, writer of the Seattle Times. So you know what I'm saying? Bulldogs, we making moves out here. But so I was a writer there at the Messenger. I also played football. And went on to college to Elizabeth City State University down in North Carolina. And I was on college radio there, WRVS 89.9 ECSU. And believe it or not, though, I have a degree in geology and a minor in environmental science. So that's what I studied in college and in school. So anybody watching your podcast, that is like, you're not, it don't always have to be like, what I'm saying, what you studied in school. And really interesting stories. You might get better stories this version. Is that, in college there, I played football, and then I would do like color commentary for women's basketball, right? Or women and men's basketball, because I played football. And I think it was my senior year, or it was the year right after I graduated, I started working in the environmental research lab there in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. I was doing like water testing and everything else. But in my free time, I was always doing something at the radio station, and I was doing a nationally syndicated show. It was called the Black College Sports Report. And it was wild, man, because I would drive like sometimes 200-300 miles, sometimes 400 miles, and go and cover a game. You go like down to Charlotte, North Carolina, Johnson C. Smith might be playing somebody, or North Carolina A&T, or up to Richmond, Virginia, or something like that. And you drive up there, cover the game, get a game story, and you get $25. But if you got an interview with a coach or a player, it's like another like $20-25. So maybe $50, which didn't cover anything. And it wasn't like you got the money then. It had to be, posted. But in 60 cities or 60 markets across America, I owned 90 seconds of the airways, and we sign off, in Charlotte, North Carolina, I am Omari Salisbury for the Black College Sports Report. And it was like being, it's funny because it's like right now it's such fast food culture around media, and a lot of things, instant gratification. How can I blow up and go viral, and, things like that. But man, I really grew up in a space where you really had to earn it. And imagine driving sometimes, 4 or 5 hours, sometimes each way, to cover a game that you had to buy a ticket to get into, by the way, and making maybe $50 if you're lucky. But the payoff is that you'd be heard in all these markets, you know what I'm saying, across America, with the Black College Sports Report. And I think that early on was like, it was hard work, but it's a labor of love. And I remember that year I ended up winning the award for Black College Broadcaster of the Year. I won an award for that because, the commitment to it. But for me, I knew I was going to be a geologist. And, this radio thing was it was a hobby. You know what I'm saying? Kind of journalism thing. It's a hobby. I could do it. I enjoyed it. But I'm gonna be a geologist, live out in North Carolina, do whatever. And so what happened was it was the CIAA tournament. People know March Madness, all the basketball tournaments. So one of the Black College conferences, the CIAA, the tournament was in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And so I got time off from the lab to go and cover the basketball tournament. And, so for me, it was great. I'm out there at Winston-Salem, we're covering the games and everything else. And, I'm back there in the press room, and way back then I was trying to do like streaming, and it has nothing to kind of do with today. It's weird because I was streaming back then, but back then Sony had this digital camera that was hella big, and you put a floppy disk in it, and you could record up to 1 minute of video onto the floppy disk. And now Real Networks, and Maria Cantwell is like hell up, the Senator Maria Cantwell, the company she used to work with, Real Networks. Real had the technology that could, to actually stream video. Like even if you record video, you still had to have all these other things like a streaming server and everything else. And like we were streaming like, video clips and everything else way back when. It was like, I don't know, 20 years ago. And so I'm there in the media room, and there is a producer named Daddy O. And now Daddy O had produced a lot of tracks for like Notorious Big and Mary J. Blige and all this stuff, right? Like Daddy O was like big. And everybody saw Daddy O, and so all these people, they're media people, and so they're giving Daddy O their resume and like, how can I keep up with you? And me, I know I'm gonna go back to my lab in North Carolina. So, I say, hey, Daddy O, nice to meet you. Like, and I keep it pushing. You know what I'm saying? It's this icon. It's great. So it's the last day of the tournament. He's like, yo, Omari. Yo, man, he's like, you like the only one who ain't been over here talking to me or whatever. I said, I'm just trying to focus on my game stories and want to, this and that. I gotta go back to Elizabeth City here. He was like, nah, man, you got skill. You're not supposed to be doing this geology. You're supposed to be doing like, some media or something. And I'm like, man, okay, bro, I'm open for it. And so, we exchanged contacts, and I rolled back out in North Carolina and actually went and visited some family in South Carolina, and he hooked me up with what his boss at the time was Mike Antonoro, Nooch. I think he might still be over at ESPN now. And Daddy O was like, yo, I met this guy named Omari, and he loves black colleges and sports and this and that. And I flew up to New York, and I meet Mike Antonoro. And at the time, there's a shoe company called And One. I don't know if you ever heard of And One. No. Oh, snap, man. It's glory days. They're like And One. So And One, and they had launched a platform it was the basketball network, but it was called Hoops TV. And it was just ahead of its time. It was like everything we're doing now, but it was built for like, over the internet. So it's like everything, like it was 20 years ahead of its time. If it came out now, it would demolish everything. There just wasn't enough broadband across America. The concept of it was dope and this and that. But, even right now, people still struggle with broadband and the phone, forget it. There wasn't video on the phone and all that 20 years ago. Everything was, basically on your computer. But Hoops TV was dope. But anyway, so I go out to New York, and Mike Antonoro was like, well, what are you doing? You're a journalist? I'm a geologist, but you know what I'm saying? I'm nice on the radio, and I get my game stories in and this and that. And basically, they hired me, man, on the spot. And then one day I went from being a geologist to a writer and a producer for the basketball network, for Hoops TV. That's and incredible. Yeah, for the next year and a half, 2 years, they gave me an American Express card, a camera, Canon camera, and an XL4 or something like that, and said, go across America and get stories. Wow. And so, man, big cities or small towns, the NBA finals to, you know what I'm saying, high school phenoms. I covered all of these stories for Hoops TV, and was fortunate enough to be a part of some pretty cool projects over there, including the movie Ball Above All. I was on road with the Rucker Park, all the famous players from Rucker Park and everything else, man. You check out And One when they've brought it back to this new kind of brand right now, but check out And One mixtape. All right. And you'll Google that, you'll be like, whoa. And so, but that encounter there in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, it goes back to what my mama was always saying. She was like, son, just try to leave things better than you found it. And even there in that press room, my focus was just only on, man, how can I get the best, game story? I was already ahead of the curve because I had this Sony camera with the floppy disk and the 1 minute video, which was like crazy then. It was like you could go to the Elizabeth City website and we're the only people. The ACC wasn't even streaming anything then. You know what I'm saying? And you could see a game interview and it'd be like, whoa, it's like true video and everything. But, the focus is just leave it better than you found it. And you know, and that passion around media. And, you know, this has been the story of my life. I know the Seattle Times article, it was like, you know, it's the Black Forrest Gump. And kind of in a sense that, you know, I describe myself like that because I've just always been the right person in the right place, but always prepared for the opportunity, in pleasant ways. And sometimes, you know, we saw here with the protests, but, you know, the fundamental skills when you talk about media as well, a lot of the fundamentals are very good, even in high school, instructors at Garfield High School. And then at Elizabeth City State at WRVS, Greg Sampson, rest in peace, the fundamentals. You know, I used to reel to reel there, man. Wasn't no digital recorder. You know, it was very expensive. We were at, you know, a poor black school. And so, man, we had tape, and I used to take a razor blade, cut the tape, splice it, you know, everything, put, you know what I'm saying, do all of that. But those fundamental skills are something that has allowed me to be in all these different countries around the world and have the fundamentals, not only just, talking a microphone maybe, which is kind of easier looking at camera, but what are all the things that go behind that and everything else. But like fast forward in that, I don't know, 5, 6 years later, I went to Tanzania, and that was a whole story in itself. But, you know, I got there on vacation, and in the first few days I met really all the people who were really impactful in my career on that side of the world. I met them all in the first 2-3 days of me being there. And I was like, yo, I need to be here. I'm supposed to be here on this continent. I'm supposed to be here.
Project that you were working
No,
on?
it was just random. Like the guy I went there with, he knew some people, and another dude, I was just happened to be at a bar. You know what I'm saying? He heard my accent. We started talking and this and that. And I mean, it's, you know, so much of my career has just been led by like listening to the small voice and to my intuition, to my gut, to my faith, and, you know, and things like that. And I mean, what really turned out to be is like 15, 16-year career kind of overseas in different markets. It's taken me to almost 60 countries around the world. Half of those, you know, on the continent of Africa. I've lived in Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, South Africa, Nigeria. You know what I'm saying? You know, and then, you know, and even the UAE, you know, through the Middle East, you know, people talk about Dubai a lot, man. I've been transiting through Dubai for like 15, 16 years. I lived in Dubai for 4 years. There, Abu Dhabi, and launched a TV station there in Abu Dhabi. But the fundamentals of like where I'm at, one, learned, you know, through these different experiences in my life. I remember being actually when I was still at Garfield, I remember I wrote an op-ed in the Seattle PI way back when. You know, I mean, I've been in media behind the scenes or in front, you know, almost my whole life. But being over there in the East Africa and the African media market in any developing country, like I said, it's difficult. And it was very difficult then. Like I said, it's a bit different now. But it was difficult, you know, just the work environment. And you come back home, and so you come back home here, I'm like, man, this shit is easy. Everything works. Everything, you know what I'm saying? Everything is working properly and all these other things. I mean, there's so many things that people hear when they're saying like, oh, I'm having a hard day. You know, there was traffic. Man, shit, you ain't seen traffic. Go sit in that traffic in Lagos. You know what I'm saying? 3-4 hours, this and that. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, man, and you go, there's, like I said, no electricity somewhere, the internet is out, and all these other kinds of things that like the person here who's like, oh yeah, well, you know, my latte was cold, and, you know, I'm gonna complain to Starbucks. They'd fold in that environment. You know what I'm saying? Because it's, you know, it's real deal. But guys made it happen, and they still make it happen every day. And I'll be honest with you, man. I'll take my top 5 African content and news people over there and put their hustle up against anybody over here. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, the environment to be able to be successful and sustain a success is so much more difficult. And growing up, I say, you know, growing up, like I was a kid over there, but I experienced so much growth at my time at Clouds Media Group that, by the time that I came back home here, I'm like, yeah, okay, this is what all I gotta do is just work hard. Everything else is like working, you know what I'm saying? And when people look at Converge and this and that, um, a lot of people, like I was saying before, they ain't take into account that they're seeing the result of 20 years. They're seeing the result of that. And a lot of people, like I said, they describe me as a live streamer. It's cool, it's fine. They describe me as a citizen journalist, and that's just because they didn't know my story. And I will say this is when more and more media here in Seattle was like, "Whoa, hold up, this isn't the case." Early on, people like, "Oh, he's just some live streamer guy," And like I said, I mean, we ain't had no time to rebuff none of that. I'm just like, yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, it wasn't saying nothing bad, call me out my name or nothing. It was just, I don't think people really understood, and people really thought that I was just chilling at the crib, like I said, with this red iPhone, and was like, yeah, let me just go out here to the protest or something. Like, and even on top of that, Converge, the idea of Converge, his initial thought was over in Abu Dhabi, and I got back here and hooked up with Eric Calligraphy. And and we was the ones, me and Eric, who was really like, yo, man, we put this whole thing together, and Converge as it is right now. Converge was really meant, and it still is, to uplift content creators. It was never meant to be like, oh, Omari's gonna make a show or this and that or whatever. I mean, COVID changed that trajectory, but going into COVID, that whole year or more before then, every day was in the studio in Jackson making something. Podcast, photo essay, writing an article every day, shooting in the gym. You never know when you're going to get caught into the game. Just keep shooting in the gym, keep making stuff, keep making it, be prepared. And, that repetition of constantly being like, nah, we're going to do something every day. And some stuff was good. We could air it. We could put it out. Some stuff was crap. But every day, stayed after it because we would tell people. I would tell them, I was like, "Yo, this is the mixtape. One of these days, we're gonna put out the album. We don't know when. We don't know what it's gonna look like. We don't even know what the title is gonna be. But our day is coming. We have to be prepared." And COVID came, and we started a live show. We had never done a live show before, and we didn't even have the equipment. But I called when the day the governor basically shut the state down, everybody stay at home, don't leave your house, all of that. I called Daryl Glover, DQ, and was like, yo, man, we got to do our own pop-up news show for our community. So just for our community, let's do a pop-up news show. And in that pop-up news show, we can give our community the best information about COVID. You remember like then, you know what I'm saying? The stores had hours for for seniors, which was dope. But wasn't nobody in the news mentioning the stores in our neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? And things that were culturally relevant to Black people, poor people. And so we whatchamacallit, we launched the morning update show to just be able to give our community information about what's going on with COVID. And man, we loved it. Like the very best days of the morning update show of everything was COVID, so it was bad. But then before the protest, that stretch, that 2-3 months, it was so amazing because it was such a positive experience. Our community the response was so dope. And it wasn't people outside of our community. And I don't say that in a discriminatory sense, but everybody who was watching Converge were people who just love to see these Black kids there talking about what's happening in the city and uplifting their community and everything else. And I mean, it was almost like a big group hug every morning. The morning update show used to be 2 hours. You know what I'm saying? And we just made it up as we went. And, no one had, even though I spent a majority of my career in media and a lot of it on the back end, actually getting like broadcast licenses and helping launching TV stations and radio stations. And that's what I did there in the Middle East and on the continent. But like the technical part of operating a TV or doing a TV show, all I could do was take my knowledge from radio and translate it over to TV and be like, hey, let's go for it. But it all just kind of worked. And it was, I'm telling you, it was so dope. It was so dope because it was just our community. Like, we weren't interested in reaching all these other people. We just wanted our neighborhood to be able to watch. And, May 25th is this crime against humanity, the murder of George Floyd. And it was crazy because going into that week, there was a story we had picked up on, and really black media and small independent media are the reason why this trial is even happening right now on Ahmaud Arbery. Because Ahmaud Arbery got murdered down there, and the killers were free. They were walking around free. And it was black media and small media that kept making enough noise about it that the national media came in. And the next thing you know, the State Bureau of Investigation moved in. They arrested the guys that killed Arbery, and now there's a trial that who knows how that's going to turn out. But, we were on that story early out here. And, and not to digress, but black media, like Trayvon Martin, it was black media outlets that kept Trayvon Martin's name alive till the big media came in, and then what I'm saying, the spotlight is there. But like that week, morning update show, like I said, it was like a big group hug. Like, it was the most amazing feeling. If I could ever go back to that, that would just be so dope to just talk to our neighbors, man. But so
I gotta say, like, one of the things that I really have grown to love about Converge, and like especially in the time I've watched since the protests. I mean, the protests were a whole thing in of itself, but the time since then is that like somehow you've managed to make it feel like we have like a small town paper. I come from a small town where we have like small local journalism that covers stuff that the national news never hears about, And Converge Media, I felt like was the first time that I felt like I'd found something like that in Seattle. Like, Seattle being one of the big cities, like it's all the big news, And it really felt like you were on the ground and like talking to real people in a way that like the more corporate media, I guess, never does. And I think that really stands out. And I also think that comes from your experience, like traveling the world, and there's something about that worldly experience and then coming back to your hometown, and like there's that perspective, there's that kind of hometown feel to it, and I think that really comes across in the work you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is we're grounded in our community, and I think that's one of the best things about Converge in our programming. And also, you got to remember, so for me, before I moved home, bro, I was living in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and I've reached so many pinnacles. I've been to so many places, you know what I'm saying? I used to go to MIP in the south of France and Cannes and all of that, you know what I'm saying? And all through Europe, and the big shows in Amsterdam and in Singapore, and in, business meetings in London, and, hanging out with the big dogs on the yachts and planes and all that. I was intentional about going from big to small to my community. And so because of that, though, so a lot of my colleagues in different outlets, they're trying to go this direction while I'm trying to go this direction. And so a lot of things, it allows me, because I'm unbothered about all these other things, because I don't need the next big story so I can get out of this market to go to that market, or the next big story so I can go and get this award, or the next this and that, this is going to get lots of views so I can go this and that. That don't matter to me. And because of that, that allows me to just really kind of tell a story that maybe somebody, the average person might say that somebody doesn't care about, or, you know what I'm saying? It's not going to be massive viewership. And believe me, man, I got access. I could be on a lot of different stories, or I could blow the whistle on a lot of different stuff that you get clicks and views and likes. Or conversely, I could be part of fixing a problem. You know what I'm saying? So that's the thing, is when you're just rooted in the community, it's like, man, what's going to be best for our neighborhood? What's going to be best for our community? And so I got a lot of leeway and freedom, and thankful to our subscribers and people who donate. $5 fam, what's up? You allow us to really be able to not have to be like clickbait. I would just get out the business, by the way. If I had to depend on, ooh, I got you and all that, I would get out the business. I just wouldn't do it.
I think that was one of the things that was like so noticeable during that time with the protests, is like all the major news stations were coming in, and they just latch on to whatever like the biggest headline was of that day, you know, and that's all they'd talk about. They repeat it over and over and over, and that's all they'd say. And like I then tune into like what you were streaming, you're actually talking to all these different people and getting all these different voices and like showing just all these different dimensions that to the people who weren't watching locally, I feel like they totally missed out on that. And that's something that I've experienced, like when I try to talk about that period of time with people who weren't here in Seattle and didn't experience it firsthand, is like there's such a gap, it feels like, in trying to even convey like what happened then, you know, like, and what that all was, you know, because just the way it was reported on, you know, if you weren't here and you weren't paying attention on that local level, it got interpreted in such a different way in like the national conversation, I felt like.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the best thing you can do is just, man, just tell the truth as you see it. You know what I'm saying? And shit, sometimes the situations are very fluid. And right now, it's something is red, and yeah, you're like, hey, it's red. You know, a minute from now, it's blue. But that doesn't mean that when you said it was red, it wasn't red. You just gotta say what it is. You know, there in the moment. The other thing is like, man, I was trying to understand myself, and we didn't go into the protest with any agenda, and that's the other thing. I wasn't there to prove that this is this or this is wrong, this what I really wanted to understand. Why are you out here? Why are you thinking this? Why are you, you know, what's happening? Why is this important to you? And the other thing is like, we was out there for our neighborhood. We're out there for our community. And so we weren't out there, you know, I mean, and no one paid us together. We didn't, fuck, we were just there, man. And clearly you could tell we were unprepared. We didn't have no gas mask, none of that shit. You know what I'm saying? We were just out there, you know, just holding a red iPhone.
Well, and you took us all with you too, like by being out there like that and by going out every day, which must have been hard. I mean, especially after some of the stuff that you endured when they were tear gassing you and that sort of stuff. Like, it must have been really hard to go back out there again the next day. And that was something I was continually impressed with, is that you were going back out there every day, no matter what had happened the day before. And I know there were a lot of people, myself included, who were really appreciative and like really felt like they got to see what was happening through your eyes because of that.
Yeah, you know, we just thought it was just important to tell the story. And then also you got to stick to something. If we're going to go and cover it, we're going to cover it. We're going to see it through. Yeah, and it was difficult. And, you know, I mean, people saw me, but I mean, there was so many other people that was out there behind the scenes. Eric Calligraphy, Bobby Stills, Jay Grabrot, you know, Nikki Barron, G. Prez, Alia D'Alessandro, Jordan Oils, I mean, man, and you know, John Mitchell, that was his bunker. That was his, where we were at, sitting over there. That was his loft. He gave up his loft for a month for us to be able to broadcast there. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, people saw me and heard me, but I was really surrounded by some really good people. You know what I'm saying? Eric Calligraphy there the whole time. And, you know, and people, I think people just found value in just kind of just telling it like it is, man. And you know, it's just fair. Like I said, I don't really have no agenda, and it works out well for us because I don't want to run for office. I'm not looking for some power move. I'm not looking for this and that, man. I just want to shit. It's just, and you know, the thing is, it's like, yes, I wear the hat of journalist, and I don't know how much longer I'm gonna wear that hat. Like, I feel like, you know, when the city needed me, I was there. But that isn't where my passion is at. That isn't where, you know, my passion is more telling stories and things like that, like, you know, in a bigger capacity than it is to be like, oh, well, city council did this today and the mayor did that and everything else. I think that that's below my potential and the potential of Converge. But when the city needed us, I mean, shit, we was there, and you know, those windows open and close. I guess the city needs us again. You know what I'm saying? I mean, hopefully they won't, but you know, very, very few were called, and even fewer respond. You know, and I mean, we could have went home at any time, and nobody would have faulted us. You know, you get hit with all these rubber bullets and gassed and maced and all this shit, and you know what I'm saying, live. Wouldn't nobody have faulted us if we just went home and was like, you know, hey, we covered it for a day. Police beat our ass. You know, it was crazy. But it was just important for the world to see what was happening. And I say that in retrospect. Like, I wasn't sitting there at the Western Barricade like, man, the world needs to see what shit. It took a while for us to even realize that, like, the world was really watching. And, I didn't even know what Twitch was, or woke.net, and all these streams was going. They were taking this stream all around the world. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people watch. We had no clue. You just thought the neighborhood was watching. You know what I'm saying? And you heard me talking like it was just the neighborhood watching. Hey, what's up, big homie? Hey, be careful over there, man. The police is, you know what I'm saying? Because it wasn't like broadcasting here live from this and that. But what you did see, though, right, is if you go back and you look at that footage, Western Barricade, and especially like Pink Umbrella Day, it's a good, June 1st, but all those days there, you'll see it if you're listening to this story. Don't worry, it's not a quiz, but if you're listening to this story, and you listen to them tapes, then you'll hear something that I said that I used to do, that you could hear it right there. And 20 years before, like I said, I was doing play-by-play and color commentary on the radio. And what you saw right there, the Western Barricade, sitting right here on 11th and Pike, or 11th and Pine, is the Western Barricade. We see the Seattle Police Department up front here, so the bicycle officers. The bicycle officers are here. You see they don't have gas masks. They got on short sleeves and shorts, so we don't really have to worry about any chemical agents coming out right now. But I'll be honest with you, if they get tapped out by the officers behind them with the gas masks on, that's going to be a change of posture right here at the Western Barricade, and we very well might expect tear gas to come out. But as long as the bicycle officers are here and they're holding this line, we don't really expect any escalation, anything happening. Oh, we see it right there. Okay, the bicycle officers are getting tapped out by the officers in the gas masks. You see what I'm saying? That's play-by-play.
That was such a crazy moment. I was watching live when that was one of the first streams that I tapped into, and I tapped in right before they started gassing, like maybe 20 minutes before or something. And the way that you were saying what was about to happen before it happened, and I wasn't familiar with your work at that point, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, is this guy right? Are they right? And then like everything that you said they're about to do would happen 2 minutes later, and it was like, okay, this is crazy, and I'm glad I'm watching this, but it was also like, wow, this guy like has been through this before. He's seen this stuff before. He knows what to expect. There was a level of experience just in the way, but also like you were saying, I also felt like you were there for people like me that like were trying to figure out what's going on down the street. Like we're waking up in the middle of the night, we're hearing the bullets go off and stuff, and we're going, what is going on out there? And like, yeah, you showed us, what was going on.
Yeah, and and I bring that up that again, one, learning the fundamentals of anything, but like 20 years later, that was play by play. That was commentary. That was, and it would be, so like in basketball or football, you're calling it from the sports. Back then there was a radio and a dial, and you'd be like, yeah, okay, now you might say like the Elizabeth City State Vikings, they're moving from left to right across your radio dial because you need to be able to set the scene. And so it was crazy because even though it was video, I still always in this radio state of mind. And so, even though people might be able to see that we're there on 11th and Pine, so let me set the scene right here. We're here on 11th and Pine. We're facing eastbound right here. This direction is east, and right behind us is downtown and this and that. And, setting the scene and setting context and all these other things is important. And you hear something, okay, it looks like we hear flashbang grenades coming to our south, to the south of us right here. That must be Pike Street over there that they're doing this and that. And people who know Seattle are like, oh, okay. And other people who don't, at least, it's some kind of reference. And then, I just felt that it was our job to get as much information out as possible. And yeah, the police are doing this and that, but also here's Cal Anderson Park. Cal Anderson, named after Washington State's first openly gay state legislator, Cal Anderson, you know what I'm saying? And blah, 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 and this and that, So people all around the world now know the history of Cal Anderson Park and who Cal Anderson was and everything else. But, it's crazy because a lot of people were out there. It was fucked up just all the way around, because it's like there's the trauma porn people who just like to see people get blown up, or like to see this, it's crazy, and then you had like the far leftists and then the far right, and you know what I'm saying, who the far right be like everybody's Antifa and everybody's whatever, and you know the far left is like, you know, whatever their thing was on, and it was crazy because everybody had space, and for the most part, all of us guys who were out there, we all got along. You know what I'm saying? I'm out there with, you know, we're all looking out for each other. People be like, man, my battery's low. Somebody hands you a pack or this and that. And everybody, you know, was out there either for different reasons or different ideologies and everything else. But we, you know what I'm saying? We're in the mix. But, you know, for us, I just really felt like this is my mama watching. And my mama's watching. I need to just, you know, try to say what it is to the best of my ability. And, you know, we didn't go. I think one reason why we came out of this okay was that we went into it with no expectation and, like I said, no agenda. Shit was surreal, man, and that's the only thing we need to do. And it was COVID. Ain't like nobody had a job. Oh, I can't go get gas today, bro. Gotta go to work. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it was the Seattle Times article, I think, hit it, even though they highlighted me. It was us, the right people at the right time, you know? And, you know, it was wild. When I was overseas, I had a Twitter, and I deactivated, and I didn't know if you deactivate, they delete it. So, you know, before I had like 10,000 people on Twitter when I was on air over in East Africa. And then I deleted it and got it back. I had 114 people on Twitter. I hardly ever tweeted or anything. And shit, like the next thing you know what I'm saying? Somebody found me, like these people found me, all these different movements found me on Twitter. And next thing you know, in like 2 days, man, I've got 30,000 people follow me on Twitter. And so and it was crazy because the same like funny stuff, I got my own little sense of humor. And, you know, to the other 113 people who followed me, like, because they knew me. And I just realized, like, I was tweeting out. I remember, like, the first day, it was June 8th. The police left on the 8th, so it's the 9th. So it's the first morning of, like, CHAZ. There's a dude sitting right outside the bunker. He's selling Black Lives Matter t-shirts. So I'm on Twitter, and I'm, like, joking. I'm like, hey, well, capitalism is alive and well in the new country. You know what I'm saying? Oh, my God. I just realized it was so... I got college economics professors there, but actually, you know, capitalism predates this, and that. And then, you know what I'm saying? Then you got, like, the far right over there. You see, even in their new country of CHAZ, that it's blah, blah, blah. And then you got somebody else like, oh, but they need to be giving it away because it's... And I'm like, man, what is going on? You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, I went from like talking to our neighborhood to talking to the world, and you getting all these responses like, holy shit, like, who are all these people? And so I learned real quick, like, oh man, this is wild. Like, the whole world's really watching. Then you get somebody like the AP calling me, Associated Press, and they're like, yo, man, they're calling me to do a fact check. They're like, hey, man, we're here in this new country of CHAZ that the rebels are going door to door asking people for rations, and if there's no rations, then they're painting an X on their door and they get beat up later. I'm like, well, you know, actually, there's a chef named Tom Douglas who's delivering gourmet meals up here, and you know what I'm saying, and the what's it called, the mutual aid, you know, it's like gourmet mutual aid. And I said, but you know, because Kroger's known more nationally. I said, you know, there's a Kroger QFC 2 blocks away. So, you know, if they're looking for rations and if they're extra bootsy, people can walk to Trader Joe's. But there's definitely not people going door to door, kicking in, looking for rations and everything else, you know. But like the AP, you know, because this is the shit that the people that established news organizations are saying is happening. And one thing about the AP is like, man, I'll credit them. They're like, nah, we need to talk to eyewitnesses on the ground. And so I became the eyes and ears of international media. People, you know, the BBC, the CBC, people would call. They'd be like, Omar, you tell us what's going on. We believe you. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, it's powerful. That's a big responsibility because they're relaying this information to millions and millions of people. And you'll see the LA Times, the New York Times, you know, all the AP stuff, Time Magazine, Newsweek, everything. Omari Salisbury, journalist, said it's this, said it's that. And, you know, the fact that it's credible. And whether people agree with me on my opinion about something or not, they know that I'm telling you the fucking truth. You know what I'm saying? This is what happened right here. You know what I'm saying? Now, I might, if I put my opinion in it, be like, well, they shouldn't have done this or that. That's different. If I tell you it's the fact of it, like, man, the police grabbed the umbrella and the police did this and that, it's the truth. And people around the world recognize, man, if I'm saying something, it's the truth. And, you know, it's like I said, it's a lot of responsibility that goes with that. But, you know, again, we didn't get into it for a lot of other things. Some people came out there prepared to shoot movies and documentaries and all that shit. Man, it was out there with an iPhone. You know what I'm saying? Just because that was the best tool to have. Like, we could have done other stuff, but you got to go edit it, do all this stuff. The best thing we could do is just an iPhone. And I didn't realize how much that stream meant to people until like the second night. Police kicked the shit out of all of us, you know, gassed everybody back and forth. And I'm over there and I'm by that, what is that, CVS across the street from the college, the pharmacy. And so I'm on the stream. I'm like, yo, everybody, I got like 7% left. You know, sorry, you know, I didn't have a power bank, nothing. It was just out the bin. Who knew it was going to really get funky like that? And then like 2 days in a row at that park, like, man, this shit is real. Man, no battery pack, no nothing. And yo, they was sitting there at Fobach, man. You know what I'm saying? The faux spot right there on Jackson and Rainier and everything, man. And watching the stream, somebody left from Fobach. You know what I'm saying? It was Carolyn left from over there, brought me a battery pack. You know what I'm saying? They found me like, yo, here's a battery pack. And I'm like, yo, like, do I even know I don't know you. We've never met, but I saw on the stream you needed a battery. And they drew the battery and I plugged it in, yo, and it's running with it. It was wild like that, man. People protected that stream no matter what, to the point that like when the police would be firing these projectiles, people would get in front of me and they would be taking the hit, man. Oh man, keep the camera up, oh. Keep the camera up. You know what I'm saying? It's like shit was wild, man. You know, I mean, in putting that story and people seeing the story, that shit meant a lot to us, but it meant a lot more to the people who was out there, who was enduring it. You know what I'm saying? Who was going through it. They were like, no, man, people have to see what's going on. That was the absolute worst. That was historic. And that was the worst display of police violence against the citizens. I think, like, of course, of Seattle, but I think that shit ranks up there somewhere even nationally. And then on July 25th, when they targeted the media and beat the shit out of all the media, not just us, they definitely targeted us, man. They beat the shit out of all the media. If that exact same thing would have happened in, say, like a country like Turkey, then like our ambassador would have filed a grievance. You can't treat the international media like this, targeting them. That's what happened here. If this shit would have happened in any other country, the way that the police targeted the media and beat the shit out of all of us live, you know what I'm saying? But that's what happened here. And it was important that the world saw that. It was important that this acts of police, because, you know, I mean, you live a whole life and people didn't believe that the LAPD beat the shit out of people until the Rodney King, till there was a tape. Then they're like, oh, this really happens. And this is how brazen the SPD was. With this shit being live streamed, they didn't show no restraint. You know, in a residential area with people with kids and everything, in churches and synagogues and businesses, SPD didn't give a fuck. And they just kept gassing and all this stuff and everything else. It's important to see. I ain't going there with an axe to grind against the SPD. And you'd see that they beat the shit out of us one day, and the next day I'm still back there happy. Hey, how are you, officers? This and that. You know, I ain't carrying no axe, and I still don't carry no axe, but I still will be honest and say the SPD beat the shit out of us.
Well, and that was one of the most important things about you being out there every day, was seeing that escalation too. Like in my brain that week, some of the most like pivotal moments was there was the pink umbrella moment, you know, which of course was just atrocious, you know. But then there was maybe 2 days later when the police took you back to their side of the barrier. And that was a really surreal experience as a viewer too, because like you were saying, on our side of the barrier, you know, it's like there were so many different people there for so many different reasons, you know, and like it felt like some of them had nothing in common, but like the one thing we all had in common is we're on this side.
Is that barricade?
Fence, yeah.
That barricade, and that us against them, by the way. And then when that barricade left, that's why it was like Chop went so many different ways. because there wasn't that unifying barricade that was there. And what was interesting though is because I was just like, yo, man, you know, let's look at what it looks like on the other side. And it was crazy, right? Because the chief of police called my mama, and this was almost midnight. And you can imagine when the chief of police is calling somebody mama at midnight, bad news. You know what I'm saying? The chief called my mama, and I guess the chief had been trying to reach me, and I'm streaming on the phone. That's another thing. It's like if you're a live streamer and some shit like this, man, bring 2 phones. And so I'm streaming on the phone, and so I'm not answering. And so then I guess Chief Best, my son's number. My son was out there, and little O's like, yo, the police lady is on the phone. And I'm like, yo, you know, because I was saying like, yo, we want to see what it looks like. And one thing for sure, though, it was like the police couldn't see shit. You know what I'm saying? And the video showed that. It was like, I mean, well, let me rephrase that. The police that were sitting right there couldn't. But of course, they had their surveillance. They had snipers on the roof. They had drones. They had the Washington State Patrol surveillance plane and everything else. So let me put that in proper context. That the limited number of officers that were stretched across Pine Street, their visibility, yeah, you can only see 1 deep, 2 deep.
I think that was one of like the most profound moments of that entire week was when you were back there and you were demonstrating. You were saying this is where they were yesterday, and they were right up in the faces of the barricade, and you're saying this is where they are today, and you just took a couple steps back, and the difference between those views like was phenomenal. It was like night and day. You know? And I felt like that was an amazing moment because it showed us, who had only been on the other side of the barricade, it showed us what they were going through, but it also kind of communicated to them a little bit, like, hey, a little bit of like common sense here, like it was a lot, and it humanized, like you showed them a respect and a humanization that I think they hadn't been receiving a lot of positivity themselves, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the National Guard definitely didn't even want to be there. National Guard was like, man, this is some bullshit, you know. Who wanted to be there was the State Patrol Field Force, because that's all they train and to do is like, you know, when a local police agency in the state kind of loses control, they sit in the, so that ain't Smokey who you get a speeding ticket, who was there when you say Washington State Patrol. That wasn't Smokey over there. It was pulling you over, you know what I'm saying, for doing 80 and a 70. That's the field unit. That unit trains to just go and knock people's heads off. And you heard them. They caught him on audio. It was like, yeah, don't kill him. Just hurt him up real bad. Like, that's what they train for, bro. You see what I'm saying? It ain't like people brought in de-escalators. Like, you know, they brought in all their best communicators or this. No, they brought in people to go and just crack some heads, man. But one thing for sure is like the whole city was listening to this stream, right? Because we would say something like that at night. We'd be like, hey, it's not audible here. We can't hear anything. The city, they need to install a speaker. I remember joking up there and I was like, hey, SPD, City of Seattle, if you guys do install speakers, talk to my guy G Prez. He does speakers, he sells speakers. But we come out the next day, they got speakers on the roof. And they was like, you know what, man? I mean, this is crazy to me that they want maybe anywhere at any time of the day, 500 to sometimes 5,000 people to take 10 steps back. It's easier for them as 30 or 40 or 50 officers on the front line to take 10 steps back than it is to get thousands of people to step. And then you see the next day or 2 days later, their line, like you said, was halfway up the hill rather than right there. So imagine Pink Umbrella Day, if they would have just been 5 feet back. When she put the umbrella there, you know, it just would have been there. You see what I'm saying? But they were so close. I mean, you got to think about it. It's like, what concert have you ever gone to where the barricade is right there and then the artist is right there? You know, the barricade's there, the artist is way back here or something like this and that. But, you know, SPD, they didn't know what they was doing. And, I mean, they've admitted as such. They've never dealt with a sustained protest in a residential area, especially when the protest is against them. But the thing is initially the protest wasn't against the Seattle Police Department or the East Precinct. The Seattle Police Department was a symbol of policing. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if you were around that Sunday. That Sunday, guys went there and wanted to pray with them at the East Precinct. You know, they remember there's Take a Knee. That was like with Shyla and them. They wanted everybody to take a knee, you know, and pray and all that. And I'm like, yo, this is wild. But, you know, I mean, but SPD wouldn't let them through. They was like, man, we just want to walk by. SPD wouldn't let them through. It's like, well, can you pray with us? Can you take a knee with us? SPD's like, man, you know, turn around. You see what I'm saying? And the Seattle Police Department didn't have enough. They didn't trust the citizens. They want the citizens to trust the police, but the police didn't trust the citizens, right? And the outcome of that is like that Monday, the SPD was still a symbol of policing and what's wrong with policing in America. You know, they're there in their uniform. They're the police. They represent the bigger systemic problem. But when the Seattle Police Department tear gassed, not protesters, tear gassed a neighborhood that had protesters in it, the protest now came about them. You see what I'm saying? It became about them. They made the action about them specifically. And through their actions, through their inability to de-escalate, through their deployment of tear gas and everything else, they now made the protest about them. And that's when it became a sustained protest there on the Western Barricade.
Yeah, that was...
I'll just check my phone real quick.
Yeah. At this point in our conversation, we took about a 5-minute break, so I'll just pick us right back up when we started again.
So where we at? What
right.
question you got?
All right, so I wanted to, before we kind of get through the mess of talking about the protests and just that whole cluster that whole thing was, I want to pick back up because there was the pink umbrella incident, and then there was, I think 2 days later that you went back and actually saw the other side of the barrier, and then I think it was maybe 2 days after that Mayor Durkin made their promise to stop using the tear gas. And then it was less than 24 hours after that promise that there was another stream of yours where this was the one where you were with somebody with a wheelchair and you're just trying so hard to just like be like, hey, let me help get this person out of here. They are like not physically able. And they were completely dismissive and just pummeling you guys. And that was, I think that was really where like the dedication of being there every day really painted a broader picture than you could see on any one day, because now you see this relationship that's going on where like you've been here every day. They know you were on their side of the barrier just like hours ago, essentially, you know, and now here they are. And that was, I don't know, that was just a really unbelievable experience for me, seeing that sequence of events in that way.
Yeah, you know, I mean, they definitely put a lot of their most aggressive officers up front. I mean, it was weird, though. It was a mix over time. Because over time, you get some officers, you know, like right now, they're talking about a lot of officers that left the force. And for different reasons. Some officers left the force. They did some greasy shit. And they left before it really comes out. Some officers came to Seattle because this is a very high pay rate here. And, you know, they're not necessarily aligned with the ideology of the city or the people here. It's just here for a paycheck. There was some officer who was trolling me, who, you know what I'm saying? I mean, he's here for the paycheck. Then you got some officers who, yeah, legitimately, they might feel like, oh, the city doesn't support me. I'm fine. And then you got some officers who are like, hey, man, I didn't sign up for this shit. Just like that day you were talking about where the woman was behind me in the wheelchair. And I'm like, hey, is somebody in a wheelchair? Just hold on 1 second. Let's see how we can move this person. They kept advancing and throwing the OC gas at us and all kinds of shit, man. I mean, and you got other officers who might have been in that same line with them, like, man, I didn't sign up for this. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so when they're just like, oh, 300 officers left, and, you know, and people in Seattle, they paint everything with a broad brush. Oh, they feel like they're not supported by whatever. Like, there's some officers, by the time this comes out, hopefully this OPA report will be out. But, like, there's officers who called in a hoax. There was a whole hoax that night, man, June 8th. Where they said that 30 Proud Boys were on their way up there with guns and all that. That was the fucking police playing on the radio, bro. And they knew the protesters were listening, but the end result was, remember, all of Capitol Hill, everybody who had a gun legally and maybe not, went and got their gun. Because the police said that 30 armed Proud Boys were on their way up there. The police played a hoax on the general public, family. You see what I'm saying? And because of that, everybody went and got their guns. And because of that, all these news companies put out this thing like, oh, it's an armed group that now, is operating this new country called CHAZ. And here's footage of all these armed people, security or whatever. And without the context that like guys were sitting over there at the newly minted Black Lives Matter Square, which is in front of the East Precinct. And we're really just like celebrating and amazed at the same time. Like, man, the police left. What's next? That call came through saying that the Proud Boys were on their way with guns. Everybody's like, oh shit, we gotta go get guns. And that's when people were really like barricades. Okay, we gotta do checkpoints. We gotta get barricades, man. The Proud Boys are on their way and everything else. And then that footage is footage that went around the world talking about like, oh, it's an armed insurrection. But all of that was based on a hoax that was put on by the SPD. And most likely the officers who did that shit left and probably on their exit interview wrote like, oh yeah, we haven't been supported by the city. But they done pulled off some hoax that would triggered a whole big response here. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's a lot of games, man.
It felt like there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on, especially after the police had left the area. And like my experience then was like, after having this huge weight of everything that's been going on that week, that month, finally when they left, it was like everyone could breathe for a second. I went over there over this next couple of days, and like I was like amazed at like the things like the Conversation Cafe and the memorial.
Conversation Cafe was dope.
The speeches,
memorials,
like it was all the music, like, and especially after the lockdown, it just was such an outburst of positivity. And it was so bewildering to see the way it was covered by the national media. And like, it was so disconnected.
Man, let me tell you, one time, dog, so Dan Simon was out here from CNN, and it was cool. And, we had the bunker there, and it was right next to the East Precinct. So we'd tell the international press, you can come down, to take a load off. You need to use the internet, upload or whatever. And I'm telling them that's when this fake thing came out from. And by the way, when people talk about foreign countries interfering in this and that, social media, whatever, there were so many foreign countries interfering in communications around the CHAZ, the CHOP, the Twitter accounts and all kinds of stuff. And then you look at it, it's coming from like Eastern Europe or from West Africa and all this, it was crazy. There was like real deal interference at all kinds of levels, local level, international, and everything else. But anyways, they were talking about, the CHOP is over, right? And that was their big thing. And they were like, the CHOP is over. And I'm telling all the national and international press, I was like, look, man, CHOP's not over. I said, what happened is they don't have enough numbers to hold, they don't have enough numbers anymore to hold all the space. And so they're giving up Cal Anderson Park. And they had even talked about, and it was crazy because they had talked with Chief Scoggins earlier. It was either Chief Scoggins or Sam Zimbabwe from SDOT. And they had talked about reducing, they were giving up the footprint because they couldn't hold it. They didn't have enough people. And that everybody, and that night there was a split. Some people were going to Seattle Center. Not many people really went down there. The other ones were moving directly into the East Precinct, right? And so that move happened, and then there was like some press release that was put out by like some North Korean CHOP Twitter, you know what I'm saying that like the CHOP was over with. And I think they did an interview with some other people locally. And so anyway, I'm telling the news, the international news and the national news, and I'm like, yo, this it's not over with, bro. Like, I don't know who you guys are telling this. And despite me telling them that, and you said being there every day, these guys still got on air. It was like breaking news, the CHOP is da-da-da. And so now I go live and I start going to all the tents of these guys that are living over there, the guys who got, them things, that heat and everything else, you know what I'm saying? Because the people with the straps is really the people you're going to talk to anyway. You know what I'm saying? They're the ones, you know what I'm saying? Two Clip Rick, all these other guys that's over there who actually got the heat. Is like, man, is this over with? They're like, hell no, this ain't over. So I'm live. I'm just, my platform is tiny compared to like these other guys. And I'm like, hey, did you guys get the memo? CHOP's over with. They're like, man, this shit ain't over with. What are you talking about? But less than 10, 15 feet away, you've got all the national people be like, man, it's breaking news. The CHOP is now this. And I'm like, man, I told all of these guys before they went live that that's not the story, that's not real. And so we saw like, guys just wanted to run with the story they wanted to run with, man, for whatever reason. And it was like, it was bug. And I'm like, yo, this where, you know, and they really, I felt a lot of people respected me, you know, as being a credible source on the ground and everything else. And I don't think that wasn't that they disbelieved me, but whatever it is, the narrative that they needed to report more outshadowed than believing the local guy who's on the ground telling them what was going on.
Yeah. They go with a story in mind. They don't go to find one.
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah. So now that I guess some time has passed between all of that and now, like looking back on it and looking at how the mainstream media picked it up and ran away with it in all sorts of different directions, how the alternative media picked it up and ran in so many different directions. And then there's like, you know, cases like me where I was just someone who wasn't really paying attention, who really did like become a lot more attentive to what was going on locally because of all this. Do you look back on it as something that was, I guess, like a success or a failure, a mix of both? Like, how do you look back on that time now?
So as a journalist, I just look at it as, man, this is some shit that happened. You know what I'm saying? Clearly it's deeper than that. But like, this is, you know, this is what happened. And I've been, unfortunately, you know, been around some real crazy situations locally and a lot when I was overseas. And, you know, I mean, hopefully that's a once in at least a generation kind of thing that we saw here that occurred. But man, you never know. But personally, as you know, as a black guy from the Central District and everything else, I feel like that movement here was real, but like it got co-opted and got fucked up. You know what I'm saying? Because all the people, so the thing is, in Seattle, people be having their own agenda, which is cool, but you should just say that shit. But they don't say that shit. They just put on the cloak of Black Lives Matter and push their own fucking agenda and doing some shit that black people wouldn't do. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know what I'm saying? It just fucks up the whole movement. I mean, at one point, 70, almost 80% of the city of Seattle was behind this Black Lives Matter. They was like, yo, man, we got to help these black people. And like the whole movement got co-opted. Like black people got pushed out of the Black Lives Matter movement. You know what I'm saying? The black leaders, the black femmes, you know what I'm saying? Because ultimately, Seattle, man, some white people who want to push their white agenda and whatever, you know, whatever opportunity that might arise in, then you're going to find them there. And ultimately, it don't matter at the end of the day if you're the actual black person who's being impacted. You know what I'm saying? The white majority here who have their own agenda, they could give two fucks and they push you out your own movement. You know what I'm saying? And so now look at this shit. Where's it at now? You know what I'm saying? Where's it at now? And I mean, you look at that. I mean, you should. It'd be interesting if you ever want to talk to some of the protest leaders, and especially the black femmes, and you go and talk to them and their experience, and they tell you that they got pushed out of their own movement by white people. You know what I'm saying? That at the end of the day, who was never really about Black Lives Matter. There was about, you know, systemic change. There were some overlapping things, but it wasn't never about black lives. You know what I'm saying? And then that's what you see here. It's like these guys accomplished so much, and that shit was real, and people was really out there, man. And Seattle does what the fuck Seattle always does, is especially when it comes to black people, you fucking co-opt our shit and take the best of all of us, you know what I'm saying? But you throw away the black wrapper of it. It's like all the white people want to fucking move to the Central District because, that's where Jimi Hendrix was from and Quincy Jones. And, you know, because it was the blackness that cultivated them. And so they're moving out all the black people out the black neighborhood, but so they can say that they lived in the cool black neighborhood, but without the black people. So on every level here, whether it's protests, gentrification, access to jobs, access to capital, man, we get fucked every single time. You know what I'm saying? And what we saw, like, man, we saw some real deal. And it was so many people. And I will say this about Seattle, and this is what makes Seattle dope, and this is what's fucked up that a lot of this shit got co-opted, is that there's no other city in America that thousands of white people will come out and get their ass whooped by the police every day to be like, nah, we got to make some shit better for black people. You think that shit happened in Houston or in Atlanta or Savannah, Georgia, or Dallas, Texas, would you get 10,000 white people out there to get gassed and come back the next fucking day to get gassed just so they can say that Black lives matter? You know what I'm saying? And that's what we saw here. You know, Black people was out there. A lot of Black people stay on though. You know, it's crazy out here. You know what I'm saying? You know, for reasons best known to them, and I know a lot of them reasons, but a lot of these people, especially Western Barricade, I'm not talking about CHAZ, Western Barricade, those are motherfuckers that got jobs, bro. Those was people who was first responders, tech bros, and all kinds of shit in between. They ain't have to be out there. You know what I'm saying? They wasn't sitting there like, oh man, oh, no unemployment, COVID, or whatever. These are people who was gainfully employed, but they was like, enough is another fucking enough. And they was out there, and they got the shit beat out of them. And they came back again and again. What other city in America, man? You know what I'm saying? And it was real. And those people, and that's why I always differentiate the Western Barricade between June 1st and June 8th between everything else. Because that Western Barricade, man, those were people, you know, the mix changed over time. Those were people who was just like, man, they was with the shit to see something better for Black people here, man. And they endured a lot. And they endured a lot of abuse on the hands of the police and everything else. And they kept coming back. And there's very few cities in America that you will find that. And that's something that was special about Seattle, you know?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think Seattle's got some things going for it, for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure, man.
I'm just sorry. I'm taking that in for a minute.
Yeah.
Taking it all. This has been a really good conversation. So I guess kind of somewhat connected, but also kind of disconnected. What did you kind of think of the outcome of the most recent election? Just curious, like in terms of how like a lot of progressives didn't win. You know, I thought it was going to go different.
Man, let me tell you, all these guys, yeah, you make sure you're recording this. All these guys are full of shit. You know what I'm saying? And they're all full of shit. And I'm gonna tell you that all the progressives. Let me look at it. All these progressives. Guess what? Progressives. And maybe you're not progressive enough because under the progressive watch here in City Hall. Oh, this is my girlfriend. Hold on. Now she's calling on. Oh, I hope she's got her clothes on. Okay. Well, I'm recording this podcast over here, man. What's that? Oh, the election. So let me tell you. So the progressive Black people have been in decline under all of these people for maybe 30, 40 years here in Seattle and also in the State House in Olympia. So you know what, man? Everybody else can take all their stuff in the totality of Seattle. But you know what, man? I'm looking at Black people and Black community. And, you know, the average Black household makes $42,500. Average white household, $105,000. God bless them. I don't want them to make less. I want us to make more. Look, home ownership in the city of Seattle and King County in constant decline. Home ownership equates to generational wealth. That's why Black people are starting over every generation. We have one of the widest gaps between Black achievement and white achievement in the school district here. Man, this shit's been happening at all. So what you got is you got Gonzalez and Harold fighting over maybe who's further left or maybe not so quite left. They're both basically all progressive and everything else. You know what I'm saying? Until somebody can show me things actually tangibly getting better for Black people in our community, man, I'm not with it. You know what I'm saying? And everybody's like, well, it's Gonzalez, this and man. That's why I just, man, I was like, whoa. You know, and man, Bruce Harrell, shit. I mean, at one point, I'll say is this for sure. A Black kid from the Central District went to Garfield, valedictorian, went to the UW, you know what I'm saying? Successful in business and married a Black wife. Like, man, checks every box. You know what I'm saying? Being Black from the CD. But on the flip side, the last Black mayor that we had here, man, set Black people back. Norm Rice brought in Operation Weed and Seed, the wholesale incarceration of people in our community, the abatement of our homes. So just being Black ain't good enough for me. And on the flip side, Gonzalez, just being liberal or whatever ain't good enough for me. And so, yeah, man, you know what I'm saying? Man, I'm looking for the results. That's what I'm looking for. And so when people are like, oh, progressive, that progressive shit ain't help no Black people. So maybe they need to remix it, progressive 2.0, 3.0. And believe me, I'm not sitting over pandering to the far right either, because I'm not hopeful for what they talking about either. But the party in power, who's continuously been in power here, has watched over the decline of the black community in the city of Seattle. You know what I'm saying? And all these guys, for the most part, are representing the same kind of general party and ideology and everything else, who stay in power here in the city. And while maybe their special interest has grown and blossomed and everything else, ours has been in decline, in constant decline. And so, yeah, I mean, man, I'm less than impressed until somebody can really show some tangible changes for the better in the black community. And that's why the thing is, all I can do is wait and see. It's like, what's the Inslee? How long has Inslee been in office? A long time.
Good chunk of time.
It was just 2020 where he was like, oh man, you know what? We need equality for everybody. Here's my equity budget and this and that. I'm like, fam. And you know, the thing is with Inslee, man, he's from the streets. I mean, not like streets, but he's from the city. You know, he played basketball in Ingram. His dad, his dad was the assistant coach. I think Frank Inslee was the assistant coach on Garfield High School 1955 state championship. Inslee's dad was assistant coach in Garfield's very first state championship. You see what I'm saying? So it ain't like Inslee ain't hip as like what's happening and everything else. You feel me? And you know, I mean, I'm not trying to make some kind of mandate on his full time and term and everything, but like, bruh, you've been in office all this time and now it's like this equity budget, which is cool and everything else. But I'm like, man, you've been seeing the decline. You've been seeing it. Everybody here, they've been seeing it. And it's like, okay, well, man, how do we really address it? And I think that like it's too much talk. And the people who can really act on it, man, this shit is, I don't know, it's crazy. But the biggest thing I would say is government's not gonna save us, especially black people. It don't matter who's over here in the governor's mansion or the mayor's mansion or whatever, or city council man. Government isn't gonna save black people. We have to save ourselves, and we're fooling ourselves. Now, government might be able to lower some barriers or make it easier, or actually, it just. You didn't even have to lower nothing, man. Just remove these bullshit obstacles that you put in front of us and give us the same fair play, playing ground. And, if we're sitting here as black people and anybody else thinking that whoever is in City Hall or the State House is now going to really change our lives, then we sadly mistaken, because that's what we've been doing here. And we've had it shit on autopilot. We've outsourced all these things that we were supposed to keep near and dear, and we outsourced them, and we put our political fate and future and our economic future in other people's hands. And I just think that we would be fools to think now whether Gonzalez had won, and I guess they're saying Harold won, either one of them, we would be fools to just be like, oh, it's all good now, bro. You know what I'm saying? You're going to take care of it, man. Hell no. You know what I'm saying? America is a work in progress. And if we don't work, it won't progress. That's it.
Yeah. So is there anything that you, at the top of your list of like things that just...
No, I didn't even see a monitor up there. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good stuff.
Is there anything that you think that like your average white Seattleite like me can do to try to make a positive impact?
Man, I would say that one, for sure. So maybe I could say two things. I say two things.
Yeah.
And like a lot of what you're doing in this podcast is around Capitol Hill in your neighborhood, right?
Yep.
So man, one, let me give a big motherfucking salute, you know what I'm saying, to Capitol Hill. And like you said, the average white guy or the average white gal or man, the average white person who was up here, because I'm going to keep it real. Like, y'all showed up every day. You know what I'm saying? And that's the shit that's not talked about enough either. You know what I'm saying? Y'all showed up. And the amount of bravery and generosity and kindness and everything else that the people up here of Capitol Hill displayed, courage, that the people of Capitol Hill displayed, man, that's some shit I ain't never gonna forget, ever. And it's like the Hill is like, it's like a second home, you know what I'm saying, for us and Converge and everything else. Like, man, the Hill, like, it's a real special place in all our hearts up here in this Hill, because these people in this Hill, man, they took good care of us and they looked out for us on the real. And, when you're saying what the average person can do, I mean, shit, I seen it, show up. But the other thing, I guess maybe in a tangible everyday sense, is like, man, especially in this neighborhood, it's a lot of broke people just getting by, of course, like everywhere. But it's a lot of people in influential situations. Somebody like me, this whole story I told you about working all over the world, launching TV stations in Dubai and Bahrain and all this kind of shit, came back home, I couldn't get no job. Man, it's a funny name. Hiring manager looks at it, and my name might be kind of okay. I got a partner named Fuquanda. She definitely ain't getting no fucking interview. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's things like that. That look how many people was passed over. I was passed over, bro. All this talent people say I had, it didn't just happen overnight. It wasn't somebody's genie. I've had it all along. I was never given an opportunity. I got back here, I couldn't even get an interview. Let alone a job, I couldn't even get an interview, bro. You know what I'm saying? And there's so many people like that. And maybe somebody up here on the Hill might be a hiring manager. They ain't thought about it like that. Like, damn, you know what I'm saying? That's why we got this platform to launch. It's called noexcusesjobs.com. Shit is hot. It's all like video resumes and everything else. But I mean, it's the little things that happen. It's when we know somebody's racist at work, but we just kind of let it slide. Or what's even more fucked up, I mean, it's hard to be more fucked up than being racist, but it was even more fucked up is the people who are like, I mean, because they're discriminatory or they're just fucking mean just because somebody is trans or somebody is gay or different than them. You know what I'm saying? And white people got to have enough courage to stand up for some shit. And not only when it's just them. And I'd say that, like, certain categories sometimes, like, if it's something that's like, oh, somebody said something that's what's the word, homophobic, then it's like, oh shit, let's ring the alarm. But somebody saying some shit at work that's really like, putting down black people or everything else, it's like, oh, that was insensitive. Nah, man, all of that's fucked up. How we do anything is how we do everything. And the one thing that you said the average white guy like you could do is, man, show up across the board. Not just when it's just impactful to you, you know what I'm saying, personally. When some shit is wrong, it's wrong. And these environments would change if people would just vocalize themselves more. One way or another, you can vocalize directly and be like, yo, this is whatever. If it's, I mean, people sometimes choose not to shop somewhere or to do this and that. But I think that for me, I'll be honest with you, and sometimes people use the word ally, right? They're like, oh, it's the ally. I don't look at it like that, because I'm the global citizen, and I got friends from all different colors and race, creeds, religion. Like, literally, I know people be saying that, like, oh, I got friends with, like, literally, because I've lived everywhere in the world. And even at Converge, man, we got white people working down there, man, who be out there in the mix and everything else. And I've never called them like allies. Those are my motherfucking friends. Those are my people. And we're going to ride or die irregardless of color. And that's the thing about Converge. We're 100% a black media company. Black media matters. It's up there on the wall in the studio if you've seen that. But there's a difference. That's our objective and our goal. But who we are as a company is, man, we fuck with all of God's people. And we trying to, give opportunity for all people. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, black, white, straight, gay, trans, that shit don't matter. And I think that for a lot of white people, some people, they look at this shit different. They're like, man, use your privilege to do this, use your privilege to do that. Maybe, I don't know, I can't go that deep in it. But I'm just like, man, don't be blind. I think that there's a company, I won't say their name here, but they invited us, and they were all good people. Don't be wrong, we still work with them to this day. But they invited us because they were doing something that was uplifting for the black community. They had made an investment in something that's for the black community. So they invited the black media. And so we come, this and that. And we do a story on it. And, we did a follow-up. I wanted to talk to them on the phone. They were like, oh, yeah, keep it in mind. And when Martin Luther King Day comes around, we'll send you a release. And I was like, yo, that just because we black don't mean that we can't cover other news or cover other this or that. And what was dope, though, was the light bulb went off in their head. And now we're included in a lot of the shit that they do.
Oh, good.
But you see what I'm saying? The thing is if I would have never said nothing and just been like, oh, okay, cool, then I would have heard from them months later for Martin Luther King Day, Black History, and maybe, 3-4 times a year. But then when they thought about it, it's like, oh, well, yeah, this is a news outlet that just happens to be black. And, some of the shit, they cover news. And so sometimes well-meaning, well-intending, don't have nothing to do with a ballot box, don't have nothing to do with whatever. But maybe you could expand your vision of, what I'm saying, of black people in capacity and relationships and everything else. But, I know this should have been a short answer. But I guess the best thing I can say is, man, just don't be an asshole, man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's all I can say. And especially when you say that this is Cap Hill, it's hard for me to give a lot of advice up here, man, because, Cap Hill done showed up for us. You know what I'm saying? Across the board, Cap Hill showed up. Cap Hill showed up for democracy. Cap Hill showed up for freedom. Cap Hill showed up for Converge. And man, in every aspect, whether it's out there in the protests or even after the protest, the GSBA, you know what I'm saying, who's up here on Cap Hill or Molly Moon or Petty Rosso or, I can name businesses and people and situations, man. The Hill has showed up. I think what the Hill needs to do up here is teach other people what to do, because y'all know what to do. You know what I'm saying? I don't need to give nobody on the Hill no advice. The people on the Hill need to be educating the rest of the city. Is like, yo, man, this is how the fuck we show up. You know what I'm saying? Y'all put together the what's it called? The mutual aid. Y'all put together, you know what I'm saying? There's so much stuff that came to Carolyn Hit, Blue Cone Studio, just right over there. That shit was on the Hill, man. You guys need to give yourselves more credit for, for getting out there and for fucking standing up for democracy. Make it your job to show everybody else in this city and everything else how you really get down and you support a movement, man. And real shit. That's my advice.
It's good advice. Well, I'm going to answer my own question. And I think that something that anyone who sees this should do is follow Converge Media.
Definitely.
Shoot them $5 if they want to, because you guys are killing it. You're doing such a good job providing really valuable information to all of us here in Seattle, and I'm sure further than that. So, Omari, I've taken enough of your time, but I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man. This has been really, really cool for me.
It's all good. You put it on the calendar. We got to check back in 6 months. I'm going to see how your operation has grown.
I would love that.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
You got it.
And I'd love to come check out the Converge.
Yeah, no, you come down there. Just hit me, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm there every day in the morning. You know what I'm saying? Usually late at night. Just hit me. You're more than welcome. You come down there, and when your podcast gets rolling, what we'll do is I'll have you on the morning update show. And then you can talk about your podcast, and we'll tell people how to come and listen and everything else. Really cool. No, also, we got to help each other.
Kind of unrelated, but it's my own project. Have you ever seen Rainworks before?
No.
This is like my day job. It's art that shows up on rainy days. It's on the sidewalks. We put it around the city.
Fuck around here, man.
So so this big old stencil cutter here. So if you think of anything you want, like a big, I don't know, something cool for the Converge thing, let me know and we'll do it for you.
Get the fuck out of here, really?
For sure. So there you have it. This was the second interview that I've done for this channel, and I think it went pretty decently considering. This really is a subject that hits close to home for me, so I hope somebody else got something out of this conversation, and I really hope that I get a chance to talk to Omari again down the line. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe. We have some more great guests coming up. And thank you all for watching. Have a great one.